dies.
What's up, Spikes? We're back talking about Strixhaven, but before we get into that, a couple of our sponsors. Star City Games has an upcoming event in Cincinnati, May 12th to 15th. Find out more information at sugcon.starcitygames.com. Also, GameGenic, like our pre-roll, they have beautiful Strixhaven accessories to go along with a beautiful looking set. We have a giveaway on Blue Sky coming up. Be sure to check it out. We're giving away the Strixhaven Back to College Quandrix prize pack. Find out more information there. Also, Moxfield, you'll see a lot of QR codes pop up throughout the video. Be sure to scan those to get right to whatever deck list we're referring to, or all the deck lists that we talk about today. So today we're talking about everything in Secrets of Strixhaven that led up to the decision making of what decks to build, which commanders to choose, which might be the same thing, cards that impressed, things that we liked about the set, didn't like, where we thought I did well in deck building, things that maybe felt a little flat, and just the overall impression that Strixhaven had kind of now that we've recorded, however many games. The set has 35 commanders, which is a little more than actually the previous in-universe sets, but the ones that stood out the most were the 5 dragons. Easily the biggest standouts in the sets. The cards were very, very strong, surprisingly. I don't know why I was impressed that I felt they were so much more pushed than the previous dragons, because I did originally like the original Strixhaven dragons. But these ones all, dress to impress. They all care about making your instants and sorceries have some amount of keyword benefit, discount, who knows, but it makes them all really, really strong. And yeah, the first 5 decks were easily earmarked for the dragons, and the last 2 took a little bit, but we'll talk about how we got there. So Strixhaven had a lot of things. It had many new mechanics, surprisingly none of them returning from the previous sets, or the previous Strixhaven, other than lessons. There was no learn, there was no magecraft. Each of these schools got its own mechanic, so there's prepare, which I guess is a generic mechanic, repartee, opus, infusion, increment, and paradigm. Each of them, some belong to each school. There's like prepare and paradigm, what is generic mechanics. Paradigm cares about how much colored mana you played into a spell, similar to Sunburst. And prepare was maybe the most talked about thing in the set. Prepare were attached to a lot of the emeritus's, which had really cool references or throwbacks to original spells like Ancestral Recall, Swords to Plowshares, Channel, cards that we haven't seen on a card since Alpha, Beta, stuff like that. So it was interesting to see them featured on cards again, and really, really interesting to see exactly how they interact with creatures, kind of the opposite of adventure creatures, where you cast the spell first and get the creature. These are very much built the opposite. And they're all a little different. Some come prepared, some don't. Some can re-prepare themselves. Some require a little bit of kind of back and forth, like the Swords to Plowshares one requires you to have less creatures, which is why the creature itself can give away a token. Very interesting and very hard to evaluate. the both sides of how powerful or not powerful Ancestral Recall on a creature was crazy. The discourse online was bananas. And Paradigm, not the converge mechanic I thought it was. Paradigm was a return to epic or a fixed epic. I originally read Paradigm as Rebound, and it was a lot worse when it was Rebound. I'm like, yeah, paying 5 mana for 2 Sign of Blood doesn't seem very good, but if it's Sign of Blood every turn, actually not bad. I actually wish they had done more of them. There was one of the few returning mechanics, like I said, and I wish that they each color got one big mythic. I wish it got a few more. I think most of them are pretty cool. Some of them are pretty generic. I really like the red and the white ones. The other ones are fine. I'm going to play them a lot, I would imagine, until until the end of Time of Commander. But I was pretty impressed with those cards once I realized what they actually did. I think of my favorite mechanics, once I actually played with it, Increment ended up being the mechanic I thought was the most interesting. It pseudo-evolve, but not. Increment creatures care if you play a spell, notably pay the mana for a spell, that is greater than the creature's power or toughness, this creature gets a +1/+1 counter. And a lot of them care about getting +1/+1 counters, so draw a card, add mana, do a variety of things. And once you get a few of them going, it's like really easy, like play a spell, increment, a bunch of creatures, do it again, increment a bunch, and then again, it plays well with Hardened Scales effects, it plays well with Proliferate effects. I think it's an interesting mechanic that, fits blue-green very, very well. And at first I kind of, hand waved it away, but once I played a few games with it, I was actually really impressed with it. So standouts from the set. I think Erode was one of the most impressive cards. Impressive but boring, right? New Path to Exile, right? That doesn't exile was, it seems like it's an obvious slam dunk. I think I like it a lot more, mostly because I'm more incentivized to erode my own creature. I very rarely ever want to path my own creature for the mana, but I will erode it often. That's to say that erode is much worse than path and plow. Exiling is leagues above. It's the best type of removal. It's why Swords of Plowshares is one of the best removal spells ever made. And yeah, erode is a fine imitator. And I'm sure it's actually going to be more expensive than both those cards, which is going to feel pretty bad. But yeah, I'm a big fan of erode, again, mostly because I can also erode my own things. Like I said, the dragons too. The dragons, obviously all standouts. I know once we finally read, because we had Lorehold was spoiled pretty early along with like the set preview, but the other 4 dragons were spoiled, I think 2 weeks out from the set coming out, or for the pre-release. And wow, did they not hold back. The Izzet Dragon, Prismari, and Witherbloom both head and shoulders seem above the rest of them by like a pretty wide margin. I do think the Prismari commander will be the most popular, but I think Witherbloom will be the most powerful. Curious to see where the numbers will shake out near the end, because Witherbloom's more unique, where Prismari just does surprisingly good Izzet things. I'm sure Jan's salivating just thinking about it. Witherbloom it seems bananas. Affinity is obviously a broken mechanic, similar to Storm. It seems really, really easy to make Witherbloom always cost 2. You get to play pretty powerful spells for next to nothing. And if you want to do it for fun and want to cast Vitalizing Wind like some people, or you just want to win the game on the spot, you can also do that. I think that's going to be a pretty boogeyman commander for a while, similar to Prismari, that I can't imagine this card will be good forever. I can't imagine the card never not being popular. But that's not to say the other 3 dragons aren't cool either. I think Quandrix is maybe is the least interesting, giving all your instant sorceries Cascade. Cascade's fun. I'm not bashing Cascade. Everyone loves Cascade. I love Cascade. Who doesn't love Cascade? Jim kind of didn't like Cascade, actually, when he was playing the blue-green deck. But Jim's kind of weird. The Lorehold might be the one I end up playing the most. Spin to win. It's also, I also read Lorehold. It was spoiled like feels like 2 months ago, 6 years ago. Who knows? But I read that card wrong 100% of the time. I thought it only discounted your spells by 2, not make them cost 2, which made the card significantly better. Embarrassingly, really close to release, which I had to make a lot of last-minute adjustments when Alex reminded me that is, in fact, how that card works. And Silverquill. Silverquill has been performing really well as well. I think that is, again, maybe the least flashiest up front, but is maybe the most sturdy, is the word I'll use. It doesn't require a lot of setup. You can kind of play it on curve. It doesn't draw a ton of attention, but suddenly you have 2 erodes, or 2 Swords of Plowshares, or 2 token doubling spells, or 2 tutors. It's very little upfront cost for what is, I think, like a very, very, very powerful effect, and that only costs 4 mana, it being the cheapest. I say cheapest because Witherbloom will always cost 2 of the 5 dragons. In previous sets, I've mentioned that it's difficult to beat the kings of blank, when there's a new elf commander or goblin commander or enchantment commander or auras or equipment or artifacts. There's already so many like titans in the industry that do the best in their camp. Lathrel's the best elf and Kranko's the best goblin and so and so. But one of my favorite things about Strixhaven, especially original Strixhaven and this Strixhaven, they try to make these 2-color combinations do stuff outside the norm, outside the stuff they normally do. Lorehold tries to. The original Strixhaven had an artifact precon, which at the time was the most popular. I think it was the first time working at a store that the Boros deck was the most popular. Shout out to Alex, who probably did not buy that one because it's not very Alex coded. But yeah, they try to do, again, there's the artifact precon. Lorehold tries to cares about exiling cards in your graveyard. Prismari tries to out of the norm. They want you to cast spells that cost 5 or greater, or they have these big expensive spells you can discard and make treasure tokens. Witherbloom cared about gaining life, which was typically not a black-green strategy, and not that Witherbloom the Dragon cares about getting life, but again, it was just another guild, or another 2-color combination trying to do something that was different than what they normally do. I would say maybe the most samey was blue-green. They have fractals, which, you get a 0/0 with counters and makes them grow, and this one, you get fractals and increment to, again, make them grow. Pretty blue-green, but still a little different than normal. Making a bunch of 0/0s with X counters with them was pretty fun. And I think these dragons do a good job, this being unique, different approaches to what these colors are all trying to do. With maybe the exception to Prismari, it's difficult to find the new king of Izzet. This is very powerful. Its effect is very, very powerful. There are many other Izzet commanders, the variety of Niv Mizzets, that all attract similar or more attention, mostly because they've been around for longer. That it would be difficult for me to say Prismari is better than any of these, but it's easy to say that its mechanic is maybe the most powerful line of text that exists. Witherbloom, on the other hand, it's unique to Golgari, and I think that's why it'll be such a popular commander. I think it'll succeed in a lot of ways because it does powerful things. It can do powerful things competitively. It can do powerful things casually. It can kind of fit to whatever you want it to. It can fit into like your elf ball strategy if you want to just have this big dumb dragon as a payoff. It could be your token strategy. It can be a lot of things. You can fit into like the pest strategy because you're already trying to make a bunch of tokens. There's a lot of different ways you can play Witherbloom, and I think the original Witherbloom in original Strixhaven was a bit of a miss. The Precon 2 was a bit clunky. They're trying to gain life to then give you payoffs for other things. I think Bletch is sweet. It's one of my favorite cards in the set for sure. We're going to talk about Bletch. And Witherbloom is, again, obviously impressive, and you can build him a variety of ways. My only concern is that he's a little too scary to let stay around too much, that people will unfortunately be afraid to play him. Similar to, I don't want to say Korvold, but, you know, one of those kind of remove on-site commanders for sure. But yeah, again, just like very impressed that these decks and these color combinations try to do something different in Strixhaven, which I'm a huge fan of. So after 5 dragons, we needed 2 more decks. And Bletch, while revealed very late in the game, was an easy pivot because look at him. I do not want to play Bletch. He's adorable. I never want anybody. I'll never let anything bad happen to him. He's the like insect, pest, spider, other creature types inserted here. Commander that Blex wanted to always be. Blex was a close. He was just a lord, right? That had a spell on the back. He was just an unimpressive commander. And Bletch, rest in peace, Blex. Is that a spoiler? Who knows? I guess if you read the flavor text on this card, you immediately know what's happening. Bletch is everything I want it to be. There's a lot of ways I could have built Bletch, and I don't want to get too deep into that because we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I settled on just insects and pests, and I'm very happy with how it turned out. Yeah, and I was a huge fan of this, how the deck looked pretty quickly. The last deck I settled on was Berta. The last name, I don't want to, I embarrass myself trying to say it on camera. If you want to see that, you can go look at game 3. I think that's what happened in game 3. But Berta, I wanted to build something that felt more Quandrix that wasn't Quandrix the Proof. Quandrix the Proof is just blue-green Cascade, Landfall. It came together pretty quick, admittedly. Like, I don't think it does anything special, except for not find an inevitable betrayal when you needed to find inevitable betrayal. I wanted to do something that, again, was fractal-focused. And while I actually wasn't impressed with Berta at first, once we played, like, Jan played the deck and then I played the deck, I was, like, really happy with actually, like, how Increment felt. I think that the deck needed some retooling, but I was actually really happy with how overall that mechanic felt, along with the fractals. So, yeah, those are the 7 we landed on. And I'm going to talk about the ones that I almost kind of maybe didn't build in the next segment. So again, we landed on 7 decks, and I want to talk about kind of like what I think I did well, what we think, you know, I could have done better, and how I thought the decks performed overall. I would say, you know, it's easy to say they all did okay. I think no one deck performed necessarily badly. The decks I was the most happy with how they turned out were Lorehold and Prismari. I did have to change Lorehold kind of last minute, but I was very happy with, I don't think I missed anything obvious, which is always a big concern when we kind of put these decks together pretty quickly. You know, we had both the untapping artifacts. I think one oversight might have been Inti, which has been kind of coming up in comments. Alex missed it a couple times, but it isn't a May. It does exile. It only till end of turn, so you end up exiling a lot of cards for kind of no reason. But it is an individually powerful card, so it's probably fine regardless, but, you know, who's to say? I was happy with both those decks. I wouldn't change too much about them. Again, you can mix and match some of the Prismari payoffs, but otherwise, yeah, it's just Prismari Storm spells. I wouldn't change much else, and I don't think too many more games would have changed too much. I would say I was happy with the Silverquill, Witherbloom, and Bletch deck lists. I think they ended up in okay spots. I think with a little retooling, I would probably would be happy. I like that I settled on insects with Bletch. You can kind of pick your poison with Bletch, which is nice. You can like kind of lean into the spiders, lean into the pests, lean into the other creature types I'm blanking on, obviously. But it's interesting that, like, oh, I wanted a spider commander. This can also just be a spider commander, or it could be an insect commander. I think Bletch's ability is very powerful. It doesn't take a ton to gain a couple instances of life. There's even a few spells in the set that do that. The new pests. Okay, let me tangent quickly here. I have a gripe with them making the remaking the mascot tokens, but them being slightly different. I dislike that pest. I didn't even realize this. I didn't realize this until after we filmed that there are the new pest tokens gain life on attack, not when they die. And the new, red, white spirits are 2/2s, not 3/2s. The new inklings are 1/1s and not 2/1s. The new elemental is a 3/3 flying and not a 4/4. Tokens change. I get that. But I don't know why it made me so irrationally upset. But back to Bletch. Yeah, I was happy with how the new Witherbloom looked, both in the Dragon and in Bletch. And again, Silver Quill, I think I kind of settled on the token strategy pretty quickly. Originally, the first card I added to the deck, which then I cut pretty quickly, was Breach the Multiverse, and then realized that it wasn't going to be this black-white ramp deck. Also, because I think my initial version of every dragon was this big color ramp deck, and I didn't want it to all be like that. Being able to double up on your draw spells, your removal spells, your tutors is already good enough with Silver Quill, so I figured with the token enablers, it doesn't take much for the tokens to go crazy. No matter what the effect is, as long as it makes a token for every guy you control, then you double those effects. You know, it's a lot of tokens pretty quickly. And then with any other token doubler, because your commander already does that asterisk, it goes wide really fast, as you can see in a lot of the games. I think those ones would have benefited a lot from just like playing a game or two. The two decks that I think I wish I had more time for to play a lot of was Berta and Quandrix. I'll start with Quandrix, not because I think the Quandrix deck was not good, but because I actually don't think it was very interesting. It was, again, the Landfall Cascade. I think there's probably some more interesting things you could do. I still haven't settled on what that would be, but even just to showcase the dragon better, I think I would have been happier just settling on something else in general. And sometimes when you just don't have the time, you don't really have the turnaround to do those kind of things, you settle, I guess. And I settled with Quandrix. And the deck, I don't think, was bad or performed badly, but I just was unhappy with the final result. Bird, on the other hand, both Simic decks, unlucky. I liked a lot once I played it, but again, I think playing it, that deck would have benefited a lot. Playing it a few times to try to take advantage of Berta's mana ability. It kind of felt like an afterthought that you get this mana from Berta that wasn't trying to go infinite. There were a few ways of being able to make a creature, give a counter to make some sort of infinite mana. I assume it involves the Gatecrash uncommon I'm blanking on. I think it's Ivyland Denizen. If it isn't, someone will edit it here, or here. Who knows? But there's probably a way to go infinite. I'm sure people have figured it out by now. And I didn't want to do that. Like I said, I wanted to take advantage of the fractal theme without just building Hydras or without just building, something more traditional to blue-green. Again, I think it did okay. It was a tad clunky. I would swap out, quite a few cards. I had to, got a few more reps with it. But those are the two decks that I wish I'd gone a little more time for. Overall, I don't think any deck performed badly, which is great. I'm always kind of crossing my fingers that they kind of stick the landing. Bletch was what I was worried about. Berta was the other one. But I still think that overall they looked good, but dragons cast a very long shadow, cast a shadow over everything else with how powerful all their effects are. There was three other commanders I thought about. Two is not necessarily super close, but Zaffi and the Tempests were one of the other ones. But I didn't want to build another big Izzet spell or Prismari spell deck, which would have probably ended up being very, very similar. Mosio Vane's New Dean. Again, I couldn't really find a list or find a version of it that I could, the direction I was looking for to be happy with it, so I scrapped it pretty early. And then Aziza, Mage Tower Captain, was this the Lorehold commander that you can untap creatures to copy a spell. So I actually got maybe 2/3 of the way through this deck list, but it was all mana creatures and all the 2 arms effects. Every artifact I can think of, or every spell I can think of that untap all your creatures. So you tap all your creatures at mana, you play your 2 arm spell, you get to untap all your creatures, presumably with tokens or something, because you want to tap your mana creatures, just to do it again, and then do it again. And then I don't know what it led to. But after doing all those things, I don't think it was good. I don't know what the payoff would have been. I'm not sure what to do with all this mana and this deck list of only mana creatures. That was kind of where it stopped. I think I got the 70-ish cards and stopped. Anyway, I do have part of a deck list. If you want to see it, again, scan the code. There'll be one code that'll bring you to all the deck lists, so you can kind of look at them at your own pace. Those are the 3 that were close-ish. Aziza closer than the other ones. They were mostly fighting for Berta's spot, and I did like Berta. That brings us to the end of this video, and the 3rd iteration of me trying this. I still try to work through the kinks of what I want to talk about, what people seem to want to hear feedback on. Part of our process, the ups and downs, and why we settle on what we settle on, and the overall impression of the set. I think Strixhaven's a pretty big home run. I think there's a lot to like about the set. The mechanics are cool. The flavor's cool. It obviously has powerful cards and flashy commanders that I think are unique. I think it's difficult to make something that's unique nowadays in the commander space. It's it's easy when you turn the dials to 11, but I still think the commanders, down the road will still be very popular after the fact. I know most of the spikes are pretty happy about the set. The design's sweet. The accessories are also super sweet. GameGenic really killed it this time. Yeah, like I said, we're doing a big giveaway on BLUESKY as well, so be sure to check that out. I like to hear what you guys thought about Strixhaven in general. You know, Secrets of Strixhaven I felt like a long time coming. People were excited to see the set back. People like the school campus theme. And yeah, I think overall, the story building for the set's been awesome. We have our championship game coming up April 23rd, which isn't too long. It'll see the lead up, what we've been building to. You know, we have 4 winners. We have Prismari, Silverquill, Boilerbloom, and Bletch. Bletch snuck his way in there. Going to the finals and see who will be the king of Strixhaven. I bet it'll be a surprise to even me, probably. But yeah, if you'd like to see that, again, April 23rd, you sub to our channel. You can see it even sooner, I think. Thanks for watching. As always, thanks to our sponsors, Star City Games, Moxfield, GameGenic. As always, thanks for joining me. Goodbye.